day 5 of our course on developing a fearless heart. Today, this session, I have still a few things to cover from this morning. There are also some questions, and I found the questions that you put in the chat this morning, so don't worry about that. Let me have a look. I thought I had... Give me 1 second. I sent myself the wrong file. This one I need. So how are you all doing? Are you good? So we had a crazy day here today with no electricity, and so I had forgotten to do a few things, but it should be all right now. You have a wonderful day. That is fantastic. I rejoice in that. So let me go to a few of the questions from this morning because they are related to the topics that we discussed this morning. There is still a question about equanimity, which I'll discuss this afternoon. There is a question of how to find a spiritual teacher. If I have time, I will talk about that tomorrow at the end of the last session because it's not really related to the topic we are talking about. And then there is a question, what is exactly a delusion? So a delusion is anything that disturbs the mind. And the delusions all arise from what we call the self-grasping mind. And the self-grasping mind reacts when feelings arise in the mind. And so we can react with aversion, attachment, or ignorance. And then from that, other delusions can arise like jealousy and anger and resentment and pride. They're all based on attachment, and some of them are also based on anger. And all of them are connected to ignorance. And so they disturb the mind and they have a view of reality which is not in accordance with reality. They tell us a story which in actuality is not true. You know, like attachment tells us, I'm going to get you what you need. I'm going to help you to make you happy. But in actuality, when we investigate the nature of attachment, we can see that attachment causes suffering. And so we normally follow the delusions, especially when we are functioning on our automatic pilot. And with that, we create actually constantly causes for suffering. And so often we can feel like, you know, I try to achieve that, but it's not working. Somehow, maybe I'm doing something wrong. You know what, I'll try it again, and I'll try better, and I'll try harder. But because the method that we are using is based on something that is not in accordance with reality, we can never get the outcome that we expect. Because the method that we use doesn't have the capacity to bring that to us. So then there is a question from Todd, and he says, when we feel pain, we and normally we react with aversion, then now we embrace that. And when we will feel pleasure, normally attachment follows, and now we let go. Is this opposite of our intuition? I wouldn't call that intuition. It is opposite to how we react emotionally. Maybe you can call it instinctly. It's like the instinct that we share with animals. Intuition, connotation of wisdom. The delusions of wisdom there, but the deluded wisdom. So yes, we do totally the opposite. So you go against the stream. It feels really weird in the beginning, but when you start practicing, you feel that it is fantastic. So it's insane what we are doing in Buddhism, if you really check it. But it works. And so then you ask, sick literally or figuratively? So I'm thinking you refer to the effects of the attachment, whether that makes us literally sick. Yes, that makes us literally sick. If you want to stimulate, increase your aging process, follow your attachment. And if you look into highly realized meditators, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he says he goes to doctors and they investigate his health. And they say internally, you have an age of a 35-year-old person. How come? Because there are no delusions, or hardly any delusions, or very subtle delusions. The aging process doesn't happen, or doesn't happen so quickly. So it is attachment that makes that we age faster, and it is attachment that causes disease. Every time when we take too much, the body gets out of balance, and we get sick. And Paula asks, if you really feel that you want rebirth, that you don't want rebirth, is that selfish? So actually, you can say, I do not want to be reborn, but we do not have a choice. As long as karma and delusion, you don't have a choice. You will be reborn. And then we can only say, okay, if I'm going to be reborn, as long as I'm under the influence of karma and delusions, I better make sure that I create causes that I'm not going to be reborn in a suffering realm. And, if you feel that life comes with so much suffering for you and you do not enjoy it, Bodhisattvas, they do try to enjoy every aspect of life, so that when they make prayers to come back to help others, enjoy every activity of samsara. So when you have a lot of aversion, I would try to practice the techniques that we do with self-compassion, that you take on that suffering and sit with that. And at a point, you will get glimpses of joy when you do these activities. And Subo asks, why can't we eat fish, or why is not eating fish the main way of getting rid of this, I'm not going to call it virus, but the situation in the world? I do not know. This is something that Lama Zopa observed, and I just repeat what he says, because I don't see anything of this kind of reasonings, subtle reasonings why things happen the way they happen. But I can see that this situation is a result of we as humanity having engaged in negative actions, for sure. So we can do actions that help to change that, right? If we don't do anything and we just continue and we'll wait till things come to normal, things are not going to come back to normal. Right? Only when we change our mind, when we change our actions, when we become more careful, become more aware of the harm that we are doing to each other, and the karma of humanity can change. But it's not going to come from nowhere. All right, so that were the questions, and the question from Warren I'll do tomorrow afternoon. And let's start with the material from that is still left for today. So maybe we take 1 minute to settle the mind, to focus the mind. To remind ourselves why we are doing what we are doing, and using that to set up a positive motivation. And try to direct your motivation to thinking of all sentient beings and wishing to be of benefit to them. So this morning we spoke about, or maybe I should say I spoke about, how we can, in terms of, we are trying to develop self-compassion, the wish for oneself to be free from suffering. So we looked into what is suffering, and then what can we do in order to be free of these types of suffering. So this morning we looked into what we can do in order to be free of the suffering of suffering, which is the most coarse form of suffering, which is the suffering of pain, all the painful experiences. And we went through that in terms of what kind of karma, what kind of actions do we engage in that help us to stop suffering and that help us to create happiness. And then we looked into the delusions. What can we do when the delusions arise in the mind in order to subdue them? We do that in general for any delusions, and then for the particular delusions. And so then we go to the next type of suffering, which is the suffering of change, which refers to the pleasurable experiences that we have. So while we are in samsara, we like to create the causes for these pleasurable experiences because we need them, liberated from samsara. But it is important not to cling to these pleasant experiences, because then they become the cause for suffering. right? And so for that, it is mainly the suffering we cause by clinging. So for that, you think about attachment and the disadvantages of attachment and the antidotes that you can apply to counteract your attachment. So that's all we can say about the suffering of change. And then we talk about the suffering of conditioned existence. And so we spoke a little bit about where is attachment and aversion coming from? What is the root cause of that? And the root cause of our delusions is the self-grasping mind. The mind that grasps at a self in the way it appears to us. We believe that the self exists in the way it appears to us. And Buddhism says, no, the self doesn't exist like that. So then we say, how does the self appear to me? As existing inherent, existing objectively, as if there is a objective entity inside my body and mind somewhere, which is the self. And Buddhism says the self does not exist like that. So, in order to realize that the self doesn't exist, in order to realize the nature of reality, we first have to realize that the self doesn't exist like that. So we create a very clear image of how we see the self, how it appears to us. And then we apply reasoning, and this course is too short to go into this reasoning. We can talk weeks about that. But then you apply reasonings to reason with that, with your own mind, to say, if such a self would exist, then this and this and this and this, and that is all not correct. And so then the conclusion is, therefore, such a self does not exist. We are empty. The self, or is we are empty of such a self. That self cannot be found. And then when you have realized that such a self that appears to us and that we hold to exist, that doesn't exist like that, then you can say, okay, then how does the self exist? Because we do have a self. And so Buddhism says the self exists by completely dependent upon causes and conditions, upon the parts, the body and the mind, and upon the mind imprinting. It is dependent upon name and conception. So it appears to us as objective, autonomous, independent entity, while in actuality, it is an entity which is totally dependent upon causes and conditions and upon the mind, upon name and conception. And so in order to realize emptiness, we first need to meditate on how the self appears and how it doesn't exist, and then how it does exist. So there is a long question. When you say the self doesn't exist like that, do you mean that the existence of the self does not follow the terms and definition of existence that has arisen from the conceptual mind that gains its experience through the senses and that sees existence in terms of independent and objects defined and so maybe I'll just repeat what I mean, and I try to say it clear. So the self means the self doesn't exist in the way it appears to us. It appears to us as an independent, unitary, permanent entity, while in actuality the self doesn't exist. The self appears as an entity which is in control of the body and the mind, while in actuality self doesn't exist. The self exists in Buddhism, whatever exists is what is observed by the mind. So we can observe a self, but the way it appears to us due to our ignorance, due to our obscurations, we cannot see how the self exists, and we actually add some qualities to the self that do not exist from the sight of the self. We fantasize them, you know. We make them up with the mind. Lama Zopa says we hallucinate, you know, we make it totally up. And what appears to us doesn't exist like that. So you are essentially saying that the self in all of us humans is essentially the same raw material. What is different in each self is our karma and delusion space. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Because the self of each and every sentient being is distinct, right? My self is not the same self as your self. We all have different selves. And in nature, they are the same, in that they all do not exist inherently. So the nature of all things that exists is the same. Nothing exists inherently. But at the same time, on the level, everything that exists is different, right? We cannot say from anything these are the same things. Even things that look very similar, they're still two distinct entities. Mbina, I can't follow. I'm really sorry. I think, you know, these teachings, they're not easy, and I'll tell you, my first introductory course in Buddhism was 23 years ago here at Tushita. And for the course, they invited a Lama. And the Lama, for people who have been here, if you walk 40, there is a place where meditators who are connected to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, they're meditating there, some for their life. So for the course that I was doing, they invited a very highly realized Lama. And he came to teach about patience. And I think he was going to come one time, you know, just that we made a connection with this teacher. And so he came and he started teaching on emptiness. And first of all, my English wasn't that great and I understood nothing, you know. But something was happening in me. I could feel that. Energetically, something was happening. But intellectually, I had no clue what he was talking about. And I actually, to be honest, I was falling asleep. I was fighting my sleep. And then at the end of the teaching, he said, sorry, you know, I should actually have talked about patience. You know what? I'll come back tomorrow. So the next day he came back. And the same thing repeated itself. You know, he started talking about emptiness and he spoke and I understood nothing and I was yawning, almost falling asleep. And then he said again, okay, tomorrow I'll come back and talk about patience. And so he did that 4 times. And the last session he came, he talked a little bit about patience. All the rest about it, I didn't understand a thing, you know. And then I started to, not yet, but at a certain point I started to study. And I must say, when I look back, I still you know, you try to repeat it, but you still don't really get it. And I'm not going to say that I get it now, but maybe I can repeat it a little bit better than before, you know, but we have to think about it. We have to familiarize with it. Emptiness is an extremely subtle object. And in order to realize that object, we need to generate an extremely subtle mind. And so that is already very difficult, you know, because we are so occupied in our sense consciousnesses, which is a very coarse mind. And so to generate a mind that is suitable to realize emptiness and even to understand emptiness, we have to calm down the sense consciousnesses. We need to meditate. We need to connect with our mental consciousness, and especially with the subtle mental consciousness. And then we do the reasoning. All right, so if you don't follow it, don't worry too much about it. You know, it is something that takes time. And some people, they have strong imprints, they get it straight away. And some people, you know, they have, due to circumstances, more obscurations and they need more time. And some people do not get it in this life, but they make some imprints, and then the next life you have causes and conditions are there for you to gain correct understanding. Every time that I studied, I was with other nuns, and most of them didn't get it. Also to our realizations. So if we want to realize something, it is not that you can meditate and it's going to come. You know, you need to have the merit. And maybe merit from past lives, then you do not have to create a lot of new merit in this life. But if you do not have that, you need to create merit. And so sometimes, you know, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we offer service to Lama Zopa, to the centers, and we work for the Lama. And that is very meritorious. And then after so many years of having done that, then he sends you into retreat. Then you have some merit with you that really can take you into the realizations, you know. Otherwise, if you go in retreat without any merit, nothing is going to happen. Nothing. It's going to be horrible. You just sit there on your own. You can get insight into the Dharma, into what it really means. You cannot connect with that with your mind. So what is the I? The I, we say, is that which is merely imputed independence upon the body and the mind. So the I is, the self is something different from the body and the mind, but at the same time it's the same entity as the body and the mind. So we say any object, whether that is the self or a car or, you know, my glasses or any object, there is an object of designation, there is an object of imputation, there is an object that we can see, and then there is the imputed object, which is the name and the image that arises in dependence on that object. And they both together are a phenomenon, are the object. So the self is the basis of imputation. No, the self comes about because there is a basis of imputation, a valid base. And in dependence upon that valid base, I name that I. But the I, the self, is not the basis of imputation. These are two distinct entities. What we believe is they are the same thing. I am my body and my mind. The self is somewhere within my body and the mind. You know, for us, they appear to be mixed. They appear to be the same thing, while in actuality, totally separate. In the sense they are mutually exclusive. Whatever is the basis of imputation is mutually exclusive object. All right. Listen to His Holiness when he talks about emptiness. Read His Holiness' book about how do I exist in reality? How do I really exist or something? Who am I really? Something like that. There are some books about emptiness. One is Introduction to Emptiness from Guy Newland, which can be helpful. And there is a book from Geshe Jumper Tekchok about emptiness, and maybe Philippe can give some of these books in the chat, or maybe if he doesn't do that, we'll write them in on a file that can go into the Google Drive. And so then Sri Ram says there is an upcoming course at the Shita, Insight into Emptiness. That's right, you know, and that's 30 days, I think, or 4 times 5 days, talking about emptiness and going through the book Insight into Emptiness, which is from Geshe Jumper Tekchok. So, you know, there is a 20-day course or 25-day course, and it's still the beginning. But it can help you to get into that. There is a little book from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, which is called How the I Exists.
How things exist.
So Philippe will put a few books. Huh?
I think it's the one from Lama Zopa is How Things Exist. I'll put it up also.
Yeah, if you can put some in the chat box, you know, then people copy them. And
sure, and I'll also add them to the Google Drive as well, so they.
And you will add to the Google Drive. That's fantastic. Okay. So they say emptiness is intellectually quite complicated. But once you get it intellectually, it is not that difficult to realize. But if we look into the bodhicitta mind, the mind that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, that mind is quite easy to understand for the intellectual mind, but it is extremely difficult to realize. Right, so, you know, Buddhism is about developing our capacity, right? And so, if you don't get certain things, don't think that therefore it is not for you. Tibetan monks, they keep studying till the end of their life. And when you keep studying, you become more intelligent, more intelligent, more intelligence is not something that you got from birth and that's it, you know. We have this plasticity of the brain, which means that you can train your mind to become better in whatever you train the mind in. So don't ever think, oh, I don't have that capacity. Don't, you know. Yes, now maybe yes, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. If you start engaging and study, things will change. Definitely things will change. I didn't like study. I didn't even like to move my brain. You know, I was very lazy. It was actually too painful to even move my mind. But having done these studies was very difficult, and I was very sick for a long time. But at the same time, I can see now that there has also been a lot of benefit and that things have changed a lot, you know, and I've done things that I never, ever thought I could do. Never, ever. And so never give up on yourself, you know, put your, what you want to achieve, put it far away and work towards it. But don't believe that it's going to come without any effort, you know. Oh, I want to open my heart for all sentient beings and it's easy. No, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. There's going to be a resistance from all kinds, from all sides. And you're going to see parts of your own psychic that you never thought that existed within your mind. You know, but Lama Zopa says the dirt has to come out. So all that needs to surface and needs to be purified, and you need to let it go. And then the mind becomes cleaner and cleaner and more empty of delusions, and then there is more space for wisdom and compassion. All right, let's go to extending compassion to all, you know. We have been talking for a whole day about developing compassion for ourselves and how to do that. And I hope that we have some kind of good foundation, you know, that you understand the foundation that we can use to develop compassion for other sentient beings, for all sentient beings. So the Buddha in his life, he had this deep wish when he got confronted with suffering, that he had this deep wish to find a method for people or for sentient beings to become free from suffering. So he was motivated by great compassion. And great compassion has two meanings. It can be seen as the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering. And so this wish is not only generated by bodhisattvas, which is the beings on the Mahayana path who wish to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. But the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering is also realized by the Hinayana Arhat, which is somebody who has walked the path free from suffering for his own sake or her own sake. So, and then because of that, some people say, well, then great compassion is actually also the wish to protect sentient beings from suffering. So that the wish to protect involves more activity, you are more active if you want to protect someone. The wish is just you send out a wish, but you don't do anything. But if you have wish to protect, there is a kind of, I'm willing to engage in activity to do that. And so the wish to protect sentient beings from suffering is unique for the bodhisattvas. It is unique for those who generate the wish for sentient beings to be free from suffering, and they are willing to engage in actions to do so. And so the Buddha, he set out, when he had this deep wish to find a method, he set out to find the knowledge to achieve that. And at the end of that journey, he attained full enlightenment. And full enlightenment means that the mind is completely free from any obscuration, from anything that is appearing in between what we say, me, and reality. The Buddha can see reality exactly as it is, in terms of seeing ultimate reality as it is and seeing conventional reality as it is. And so due to that, he can see directly sentient beings' mind. He can see where they're coming from. He can see their capacity. He can see their interest, and he knows exactly what sentient beings need in order to attain their state of freedom from suffering and perfect happiness. And so because of that, he is, we say, I mean, this is what in Buddhism, therefore he becomes the perfect guide to help us to attain that similar state of full awakening. So out of his compassion, out of his wish to free suffering beings from their suffering, he taught the method. And the method that he taught to free sentient beings from suffering was the understanding of the nature of reality. He saw when sentient beings can see the nature of reality as it is, they are free from suffering. So all his teachings are motivated by great compassion, and they are all intended to bring sentient beings to the realization of the nature of reality, to the realization of emptiness. So we can realize emptiness just for our own sake. And then we have the wish to free all sentient beings from suffering, or we realize emptiness with the motivation that we actually want to free all suffering beings from suffering. And then we are motivated by the great compassion that wants to protect. So that is about the motivation. So somebody said, what does it mean, fearless? You know, because the title of the course is Developing a Fearless Heart, right? So according to Buddhism, there is only one type of being that is totally fearless, which is the Buddha. And so in the teachings, it says that the Buddha has achieved 4 fearlessnesses. He is fearless in 4 ways. And 2 are with respect to his own welfare, and 2 are with respect to others' welfare. So with respect to his own welfare, he is fearless in the sense that he knows that he has realized everything that can be realized, which means that he is not afraid to meet anyone who says, oh no, you haven't realized everything yet. There is something that you haven't realized yet. He knows so well that he has realized everything that can be realized, that he is fearless with respect to that. And having eliminated all the contaminations from his mind, having eliminated all the obscuration, So his knowing is so clear and without any doubt, so much certainty that he is fearless in that anyone would come to him and say, no, no, you haven't done the whole job yet. And so he is also fearless with respect to others' welfare, which refers to the fact that the Buddha taught which kind of obscurations are preventing us from attaining enlightenment or liberation. And so he said, we have this kind of obscurations, and he is fearless with respect to knowing that nobody will come and say, no, no, there are other objects that need to be abandoned in order to achieve the state of omniscience. And then he is also fearless with respect to being shown the path. You know, he knows that the path that he is showing, that is the path that definitely will lead to freeing oneself from samsara and attaining enlightenment. So there is a question with respect to obscurations, you know, whether, because in the West or when you've grown up as a Christian, there is judgment, there is punishment because you make mistakes or because something is not good enough in you. You know, in Buddhism, there is nothing like that. Nothing. There is no one who is judging except yourself. There is no powers outside of you except your own mind. And with respect to delusions, if you know that your delusions are what causes you suffering, the most appropriate attitude towards that is compassion. You know, and if you try to purify your mind, try to eliminate these obscurations. In Buddhism, there is no place to point at any time and say, you did that wrong. There is no place for punishment when you do not live up to expectations. They are not even expectations, you know. The teachers who have realized the teachings, they are the most compassionate beings. No matter what you do, no matter how you have followed your delusions, no matter how you have engaged even in negative actions, you know, when you go to them and you talk about that, they will only answer with compassion and say, start again. But no push, nothing. And so, you know, there is no fear. I mean, sometimes you can be afraid, you know, of telling your teacher, I actually did this and this and this. But when you did it, that is totally in relation to yourself. You know, once you express that, there is punishment. Sometimes can appear like a little bit rough, but the feeling that you get is never harsh. I never experienced that. I've never heard talk about that. I only hear people say, oh, he or she was so compassionate. You know, because we are suffering. And so the delusions, we have them with us since beginningless time. And they already think it is fantastic that any effort that you make is fantastic. And then even if you don't succeed, it doesn't matter. you try again, try to generate more merit. And I think the more wisdom you have in relation to what a path really means and what it really means to walk the path and remove the obscurations and free yourself from that. And I know that sometimes he just cries. And it's like, what do you mean quickest way? We have these habits since beginnerless time. There is no quick way. So if you can engage and you stay on the path, that's already fantastic. All right. So then we move further to equanimity, right? That's where I want to go today. And just to let you know, I skipped again the journaling today. I will try to put it in tomorrow again, but I definitely not going to make it if we, there's just too much to say. So let's see where we are right now. The equanimity in our mind. At the moment, we have a biased mind. Our mind is based on what we like and what we do not like. Right? If someone is kind to me, I like that person. When somebody speaks harshly to me, I don't like that person. So how I engage in relationships is based on whether or not I receive benefit from that relation. If I don't receive any benefit from that relation, I prefer not to be in a relationship. But if I receive something that I feel is good for me, I stay in that relationship. True? That's our highest mind. It's all about me. It's very self-centered. It's about what I like and what I don't like. And so we can connect that back to the 8 worldly dharmas. As long as we are under the influence of the 8 worldly dharmas, we will have a biased mind. We will have a mind that likes certain things and doesn't like other things. And then, in dependence upon that liking and disliking, attachment and aversion follows. If we want to develop a mind that feels compassion for each and every being, we need to do something with that biased mind, right? And so one way to deal with the biased mind is to meditate on impermanence and death. Right? That's what you know from the previous teachings. But we can do more about the biased minds. We need to see, I think, that as long as we have this biased mind, that we are reacting from a place of emotion. We are emotional beings. And we react. It is not based on any reasoning. It is not based on any logic. It is not even based on reality as it is. It is just based on what I like and what I do not like. And so we can see that bias very well when we see 2 people fighting with each other. For who do we have the empathy or the sympathy? Who do we connect with? The perpetrator or the victim? I have never heard that people who have an emotional mind, that they sympathize with the perpetrator. They always choose for the victim. Oh, we see that being suffering. Oh, we wish that being to be free from suffering. We want to help that being. But we do not see the suffering of the perpetrator. You see, I'm live. We have a monk walking in the back. Is that true? Can you see that? When you see but if we would broaden our mind and we would think about not just the suffering that we experience in the moment, but if we would think about creating causes for suffering, then we could say that the victim is experiencing some kind of result from previous karma. And once this result is experienced, the karma is finished. But the perpetrator is creating the causes for his or her own suffering in the future. So who do we need to have more compassion with? Right? The suffering from the victim is finished, but the suffering of the perpetrator still has to come. So we can try to think like that, you know, that can help us to see things in a different perspective. So how do we develop equanimity? The word of equanimity is an even-minded attitude, eliminating the bias that comes from attachment to some living beings and hostility towards others. If we do not eliminate that bias, any love or compassion that we feel is biased, is only based on our own benefit. So within Buddhist perspective, there are 3 types of equanimity in the text. There is one equanimity that refers to, that is connected to meditative stabilization. It is a mental factor. So we're not talking about that equanimity. There is also a feeling of equanimity. And we're not talking about that. And then there is the third way the word equanimity is used is when we refer to immeasurable equanimity, which is an attitude. And so that is the equanimity that we refer to here. It is a non-biased mind. It is a mind that it is not influenced by attachment and hostility. So the equanimity that is an attitude is of 2 types. One type is that we wish all living beings to be free from afflictions, such as attachment and hostility. And that is one of the immeasurable thoughts. Do you remember? It is the last one that we say, may all living beings be free may all beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion, free from attachment to those we like and from aversion to those that we don't like. So that is one of the 4 immeasurable thoughts. And then the second type of equanimity is being even-minded yourself after you have become free of attachment or hostility towards sentient beings. And so when we start talking about developing equanimity as a foundation for developing compassion for all sentient beings, we talk about this equanimity. It is the equanimity in our own mind, free from bias, free from attachment and hostility. So let's think about the equanimity and how we see sentient beings, and I already said we see sentient beings on dependence on what they bring us, on the benefit or harm they give us. And so in Buddhism, then we say there's kind of divide the world into three types of beings. We discriminate between three types of beings. One is the ones that we call our friends. One is some are we call our enemies, and some or many sentient beings are strangers to us. So what is the friend? Friends are those persons that benefit us, that support us. They please us, they make us feel good. They say nice things to us, they help us. Right? When that happens, we feel, hey, he or she is my friend. When somebody stops benefiting us, when somebody starts harming us, hurting us, not being nice to us, threatening us in some way, they become our enemy. We might become scared of them. We might become angry at them. We might, just feel that we do not like to be with them. So independence upon them, unpleasant feelings arise in our mind. So we put them in the category enemies. And then there are the people, the strangers that we have no particular liking or not liking for because they're too distant or because we don't know them. So we divide people in these three categories, independent upon what they do for us. The category enemy, the category friend, is born from our self-grasping and self-cherishing mind. So our self-grasping mind is a mind that holds on to the self. That grasps at the self in a way that it doesn't exist in actuality. Then in dependence on that, we somehow feel that I, and whatever I experience, is more important than what somebody else experiences. I'm always worried about me. That's the self-cherishing mind. So we discriminate sentient beings in dependence upon what they do for us, how they cherish us, how they benefit us. And if we check that, that is actually a very unstable process that we apply. And we can think about, even in this life, sometimes we have friends and at a certain point they turn into enemies. Right? Often that happens with lovers who have a very strong attachment towards each other, but maybe not so much love. And that attachment at a certain point can just turn into hatred. They can't stand each other anymore. Right? So then from a friend, from a very dear friend, somebody becomes an enemy. But the other way can also happen. We find somebody is, we can't stand the person, maybe we're not even sure why, but we just don't like the person. And then something happens and they are helping us in a difficult situation. And we think, oh, that person is so kind, you know, and suddenly we become friends. And so in the same way, strangers, they can turn into enemies, they can turn into friends, depending on the circumstances. So friend, enemy, stranger, these are not stable stable categories. There is a lot of change that can happen. Somebody who is benefiting us today can be the one who is harming us tomorrow. Someone who is harming us today can be the one who starts benefiting us tomorrow. So then in Buddhism, where we think about past and future lives, we think that our friend today might have been our enemy in past lives. And the one who is our enemy today might have been our best friends in past lives. You know, so also over lifetimes, these three categories, they constantly change. So reacting from that way, reacting from these three categories, how we see these categories is very unstable, is based on our emotions. There is no reason involved. So if we want to develop love and compassion for all sentient beings, we cannot use that unstable basis. We need something else. So then Buddhism brings in reasoning. Why is it that all sentient beings are equal? For us, they're not equal, right? There are those that benefit me and those that don't benefit me and those that I don't have particular benefit from. But Buddhism says all sentient beings are equal. Why? They are equal from the point of that they all want happiness and they all do not want suffering. True. Those sentient beings that help us, they help us because they also want benefit and they do not want harm. And the sentient beings who are harming us, they do that because they want happiness and they want to be free from suffering. When sentient beings harm us, they normally do that because they feel that that is going to help them to be free of suffering, or that helps them to get happiness. People who have, you know, who can get really angry and aggressive, normally they offload that aggression as in an attempt to free themselves from the suffering of the anger that has been building up inside them. They are more concerned with their own freedom from suffering and their own happiness than that they want to harm you. You know, we often think if somebody harms us, they're harming me. You know, they did that because of me. But normally, you know, most of the motivation why people engage in actions is because they want to be free of suffering. They want to be happy, and it has nothing to do with the people around them. And so another reason why we think that sentient beings are equal is that we see that the relationships are not stable. So from that point of view, it doesn't make any sense to put people in categories of friends, enemies, and strangers, because it can change at any time. So you see that the way we are doing it doesn't make any sense. And the way that makes much more sense is that we're going to look from the perspective of the other person. Our perspective is always going to be biased as long as we have the self-grasping mind, independence on which the self-cherishing mind arises. But when we start looking from the other person's perspective, then we can see they all want to be happy. And so in that way, so we practice equanimity towards enemies. We practice equanimity towards those people that we like. We practice equanimity towards strangers. We're going to see that they are all the same. Only when we can see that all sentient beings are the same, and that, although they might appear in this life or in this moment in time as a friend or as an enemy or as a stranger, we know that that is just a temporary thing due to causes and conditions. But those that we do not like have been people that we liked in the past, and we know that those that we don't like, as soon as the relationship changes, we do start liking them. And so we make that not important, whether we like somebody or not. If we make it important whether we like somebody or not, it is all about me. And what happens to my heart is that I close my heart for many sentient beings. And when I close my heart, I don't feel well. Right? If I go around and I think, I like this person, but I don't like you, and I don't like you, and I close my heart for you, I'm not feeling well. But if I can be here and I can see the potential for growth in each and every being, and I can see, I believe that, but that's a belief, If each and every being is wanting to be happy and wanting to be free of suffering, and I give my energy in order to help them find that. If I'm very sincere in that, often that other person starts to see me as a friend. Because I'm not a threat to them. But if I see someone as an enemy, and I get, some fear in my mind and some judgment about the other person, the chance that that person sees me as an enemy and maybe even wants to harm me is much bigger. True. So His Holiness says, when I see sentient beings, when I see human beings, I just see friends. I just see old friends. And when He approaches you, you can feel that there is so much love for each and every sentient being equally. There is no distinction in the amount of love that He is radiating to sentient beings. And so when you feel that, that makes you extremely happy, that you put down your guard, that you feel totally seen, you feel totally loved. Then there is no reason to hide, there is no reason to protect. Then we can establish peaceful relationships. True. So if we want to generate the mind that is developing compassion for each and every sentient being, we first have to address that biased mind and develop equanimity. That is the start. And then from there are different methods that we can use to generate the mind of great compassion, to generate the mind of bodhicitta. So we'll talk tomorrow about that. I'm going to look at a few questions and then, I'll first let you do the discussion. Somebody said, can't you give us the question journaling, but I didn't make any. I will make some tomorrow, and if somehow there is not enough time, I will give you the questions and you can. I'm not promising that, but if there are questions coming to my mind, I will put them on the document that is in the Google Drive with the questions. Right, but don't hold me too much to that. I'll do my best, but sometimes it's not coming, So the questions for your discussion group are: what happens to your mind when you think that all sentient beings are equal in wanting to be happy and wanting to be free of suffering? How do you feel? What is changing in your mind? And the second question is, are you able to put yourself in the shoes of another person? And when you do this, do you find it helpful or not? And then from there you can explain. All right. Some questions. "12 minutes, yes."
Okay, I'm getting it started now.
Okay, thank you. I stopped it. You help each other a lot, I think you are making some nice connections with each other. Excellent. Subo says. Katrina says, apologies to my group. I ran out of credit. Well, that's me. Did you lose the internet? Valerie says, very helpful to hear other people's experiences and points of view. Mashkovich really said it's really good. Subo says it's very helpful listening. And Amelia says, we love you anyway, Katrina. So, and Todd says it is an interdependent experience. Graciela, very helpful. Cool. If things are not working, I'm also happy to hear, right? I do not need to hear for my sake, positive information, but I just want you to have a good experience. So if you want things to be done differently, I'm also very happy to be flexible and adjust things. Let me see, there was a question. So Madhavji, I'm not sure how to say that, says, are we not being conditioned as soon as we are born from society, media, etc.? I think we are already conditioned when we arrive in this body. I think coming with a certain conditioning. And then that conditioning gets reinforced by our upbringing. by our family, by our society, by the media. And then on top of that, we can, you know, due to habit, due to the place where you are, conditioning gets reinforced, another conditioning you might not be able to see so well. So yes, we are from the beginning, you know, so therefore, from the beginning, the causes for disturbing emotions are in the mind. And so therefore, the only appropriate response to that is compassion, because we are not in charge of that. We are conditioned. We don't even know that we are conditioned. And I think if you look at the moment, what is happening in society, and in some places more than other places, I feel quite lucky being in India. But if I see what is happening in my country, in Holland, when I see what is happening in Australia, which I also feel a little bit is my country, you can see how people are conditioned in believing things, you know, and as soon as fear gets triggered, that irrational thinking totally stops, and that we just think, oh, just give me whatever so that I can stop this situation, and we accept whatever people tell us to do. And then when we get used to, now you can see that, you know, there are all kinds of rules that we need to apply. People get used to it. And if they keep doing this long enough, that's how people are going to behave, and they think it's normal. And so you see children in distance 1.5 meters, and they need to sit up with a mask. If you do that long enough, children believe that that is the normal way to behave. You know, that is because the mind gets used to anything, can get conditioned in any way. And fear and attachment are, you know, when you start playing with that, the conditioning can happen very easily. Where and how do we place family? I'm not sure what you ask, Mina. You have to give me a little bit more words. You know, we are born in a family due to our karma. There is a reason that we are born there that has to do with our karma. So whatever we experience within the family is related to our karma. And I think the younger you are, the experiences that you have when you are very young, they are more deeply connected with your condition and also with your karma. And so because it has a deeper influence on your mind. So there is a lot of karma around family, but then when we grow up, you know, it's up to you what you do with that, I think. How to put the guard down, how to remove the fear from the mind. So that's a slow process, right? We cannot just take it down, except when we see His Holiness, you know, then the guard comes down in that moment. But then after some time, we put it up again. That's our defense. That is coming from a lot of experiences where we have been hurt, where we felt that we needed protection, where we felt threatened. We build up a protection. That is coming from aversion, that is from anger. And when we have a lot of fear, I think the fear is still connected to negativities that we have done. And sometimes, you know, when we have experienced trauma and we are still caught up in that trauma, in the fear of the trauma, in the hurt of the trauma, if we start connecting with the painful experiences and we start to work through them, embracing them, feeling them, processing them, breathing through them, the more we do that, the more we connect with our own authentic energy. And once we connect with that authentic energy, there is less need to protect yourself. Once you can give yourself what you need, there is less need to put up a shield, you know, that people are going to reject you or that they don't like you. The better you connect with all your own energies, your own needs, your own pleasure, your own displeasure, your own pains that you have experienced, the more you are willing to connect with that, the less you have the feeling that you need to protect yourself from anyone. And so then slowly, due to connecting with these experiences, the guard will go down. And I also think that that can help you work through the fear. Yeah. Yeah, one time I said to my therapist, I'm already working 30 years on this. When is it going to be finished? And she said, already 30 years? She said, it's only 30 years. So I thought, oh, okay. You know, some people feel, you know, this is just an ongoing thing, So take your time. So Amelia asked, in case you have the time, you mentioned that you might be looking at expanding on meat eating. So I actually did that this morning. I wanted to say a little bit and then I said a little bit more. Healthy diet, I think, is a different topic. If there is time tomorrow at the end of the last session, I will talk about finding a spiritual teacher, and if then I have more time, I'll talk about how to take care of the body and why that is important. Not that I know much, you know, but I can just share a little bit of what I know. Let me look. Very helpful. Happy that I found someone who has the same question. It was a great talk. In case, okay, you repeat the question. And then Paula, the connection between us on this course is a wonderful example of how similar we are, even though we are from all over the place. That's true. Graciela says, how do you prevent fear from taking over and be safe at the same time? So we believe that when there is fear in the mind, we are not safe. And I think you should check that if that's true. I think in this time, fear and the mind and being safe are not related at all, you know. We are quite safe, and at the same time, we are hearing from everywhere, you know, oh, so many cases, so many this, so many that, as if there is a huge danger waiting for us. And that triggers fear in the mind. So the human mind doesn't react like animals just on the immediate fear that is there. You know, an animal, when there is a threat, the fear arises in the mind, and that fear makes that some kind of hormones are released that help the animal to run away or to fight, right? Then when the event is past, the animal relaxes. You know, they shake the fear that was there, they shake that off, and they go back to normal. We are not like that, you know. We have that aspect too, that, you know, when we jump because there was a car coming, maybe we are scared, then we shake it off, then it is gone, you know. But what we also have is when we hear stories about, you know, oh, there's going to be a great danger, or many people have died. We hear stories about other sentient beings. We hear stories about things that might happen to us. That triggers the fear. Once the fear is triggered, the rational mind is gone. We don't even do any fact checking. We now have fact checkers that tell us what are the facts. We don't even check ourselves the facts, you know. Our mind stops working. And then we are in fear. And then we believe whatever is said. And then we do whatever they tell us because we want to get out of the fear. And to have this fear going on for a long period of time is extremely unhealthy for the mind, extremely unhealthy for the body. So how do you get out of that? I don't know. I did 6 talks on how to work with fear, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic that you can find on my YouTube channel. Somehow you need to get your rational mind working. Somehow you need to inform yourself about the situation and not listen to just the, how you call that, the main media. Because there are a lot of doctors who are speaking out, there are a lot of people speaking out. And if you see that fear is not necessarily in the way you feel it, it becomes less, you know. But if many people get afraid, energetically we pick it up, you know, we also become afraid, or we feel the fear in us, especially when you are an empath, you know, when you easily feel other people's feelings. So you have to keep checking. And then I think when we meditate and we really connect with our own inner being, we take refuge in our own potential of loving compassion and of wisdom. That can help also to bring the fear down. But I know at the moment the fear has been triggered so badly, you know, that many people are taken over by fear and they do not know how to come out of that. But if you really look at the numbers, not much is happening. You know? The fear is the biggest problem, and the control that comes from that. Are emptiness and non-duality complementary? So when you experience emptiness, you experience non-duality. But you can also experience non-duality while not realizing emptiness. I hope that answers your question. Amelia says, okay. The fear mind or the survival mode is very damaging. The mental space to be indeed, it's a very damaging mental space to be in indeed. How can you put yourself out when you realize that you're in that space if the rational mind is pretty much disabled? Well, I think you can't. When the rational mind is disabled, you cannot come out of the fear. The fear is very primitive, you know, it is even than the attachment and the aversion. The fear is in the we call it the brain stem, right? The deepest part of the brain. It is so primitive, and once that arises, it just takes over. And when you have done nothing with your rational mind, if you always have been living on the basis of your attachment and aversion, and you have never thought about anything, I don't see how you can come out. I actually feel that a lot of people get deeply traumatized at the moment. And so we will need years to recover from this if we come out of this, when we come out of this. I feel there is deep, deep, deep trauma in the world by what is happening now. We're not even aware how deep it is. The media fear is shrinking the world, yes. Who's control? That's the good question, no? Who's in control? Who wants to have that control? You have to look for that. I don't know the correct answer. There are many stories. I have seen people lose their minds in fear, and I felt helpless to get them out of that space. Yeah, and I think you have to wonder, is it my job to get them out of that space? I think the more we develop our compassionate mind, if we can stay present when people lose their mind, and we stay connected with our own potential, with our own inner being, and we breathe through that, and we allow them to be in that space, I think that some healing can come from that. But when we start trying to take them out, you might damage them even more. I would never do that. What do you recommend for fear of failure in daily life? Most of the time, it stops us from growing. I think you need to build some confidence somehow in yourself, in your own qualities. So I wouldn't focus too much on the fear of failure, but I would start developing qualities. And then at the end of each day, you look back and you see where you put your energy, and you rejoice in any success that you had. And I would first build up that. If you're focused on the fear of failure, then you cannot move. You're frozen. You just stay there. But you can no matter how little capacity you have, you can always do a good action, no? Very small one. So give yourself some challenges, but easy challenges that you easily succeed. What is it that I can do without any problem, without any too much effort, without walking on my toes? What can I do? And then you do that. You can go out and feed the ducks. You can feed the birds. You can do very simple things and rejoice in that. Wow, you're giving sentient beings food. That's wonderful. And rejoice in that. That's what you can do. And so then you increase the things that you can do. In your case, when you write fear of failure in capital letters, I would not start focusing on that, because you just come into this frozen area in yourself and nothing is going to move there. So I would say don't focus on that frozen area. Create an area which is really warm and beautiful, and that will slowly, slowly defrost that frozen part in you. So Emilio says, I tried with asking them to breathe. You know, you can do that, but you have to really be careful of your own attitude. That you are totally calm, and no matter what is going to happen, that's not going to disturb you. That you do not come from a panic, you know. Breathe. So we try. What's the antidote or healing or technique? What does that mean? So Auste just says, when it comes to the virus, I think there is nothing to fear. We can ask ourselves what we are afraid of. The chance that we will die from other things is much bigger, which is really true. Which is really true. I think the chance that we die from a car accident is bigger than that we die from the virus. And then the last one, Paula says, sometimes when I feel too isolated to do much good, I find comfort in feeling that I'm not doing anything negative. Yeah, that can be already. If you feel like you cannot engage in any positive actions, at least you're not engaging in negative actions. Even when you are with yourself and you are loving to yourself and you are kind to yourself, and I mean in the big way, right? The way that we spoke about it. And then if you have in mind other sentient beings and you wish them the same as you are doing a lot, right? You don't have to be with sentient beings to benefit them. You can be like the meditator in the cave somewhere on the mountain who has all sentient beings in his or her heart, benefiting them in every moment. Right? You're just a meditator. Okay, so I went much too long. I'm really sorry. And I wanted to do a meditation on equanimity, and I'm going to do that. So if it's too late for you, feel free to watch this later on YouTube. But if you still have, I won't do it too long, maybe 15 minutes, just to give you a taste of how we can change that biased mind into a mind of equanimity. So sit comfortably. And breathe out a couple of times to let go of all the thinking. And then visualize in the space in front of you 3 people. Someone that you like, someone that you dislike, and don't take the person that you dislike most, take a medium person that you dislike or an easy person that you dislike. You dislike them a little bit. And someone that you feel indifferent to. And then during the meditation, I will call them your friend, your enemy, and your stranger. So first of all, focus on your friend and allow your feelings for him or her to arise. Reflect on the goodness of this person and how he or she satisfies your needs, is there for you. And feel your conviction that this person is definitely your friend. And feel how you really want this person to be happy and to be free of suffering. Your love and compassion naturally arises when you think of this person. Immerse yourself in your good feelings. Now turn to your enemy, the person that you do not like and who is not kind to you, who does not satisfy your needs, who annoys you or makes you angry, who hurts you. Look carefully at that person and watch your feelings. Feel your conviction that this person is definitely a bad person. And feel how easy it is to wish this person harm, to wish this person not to be happy, but instead to suffer. Then turn to the so-called stranger. This person you know a little bit, but whom you neither like nor dislike. Look carefully at the person and note your feelings of indifference. Now recognize that the basis for your relationship to these three people is solely what they do or don't do for you. Whether they harm or hurt you or benefit you. Your relationship is based on what you need. It's self-centered. Then return to your friend and imagine a situation that would cause the relationship to end. Imagine your friend turning against you. Feel the resentment and the hurt. How you no longer feel warm, no longer wish him or her well. Where is your friend now? Then recall that this person was not your friend before you were acquainted, and could very easily cease to be your friend now, as you have visualized. And then turn to your present enemy. And imagine a situation in which you could be drawn together. A common interest, a word of praise or kindness. Look carefully at the person and at your feelings. Are you softening? Can you learn to feel warmth towards your enemy? When causes and conditions come together, this can happen. So why do we hold so strongly to the conception that this is definitely an enemy? And what about a stranger? Imagine how one act of kindness or anger from this person could immediately turn him or her into a friend or an enemy. There is no inherent definite stranger there. And so there is no sound reason for your feelings of indifference. Remember that your present friend and enemy were strangers to you beforehand. And that this enemy can become your friend, and the enemy could become your friend. The enemy could become your friend, and the friend could become. It's only our misconceived belief in the stability of them that holds our mind back from the possibility of change. And think that your friend, your enemy, and stranger, they all want happiness as much as you. And in this respect, everyone is equal. And everyone is equal in having the potential to develop their mind to the fullest and achieve clarity and compassion. The differences we see in people are very superficial, based on our mistaken and narrow self-centered viewpoint. In fact, everyone is equal in deserving our care and our compassion. So this doesn't mean that we shouldn't discriminate, because on the practical level that is necessary. Naturally, we feel closer to some people, and it is wise to keep distance from others. But on the level of the mind, and that is the point of the meditation, is that we try to develop equal concern, equal regard for everyone, whether they help us or harm us at this point in time. Our mind reacts to them, acts to them, responds to them equally. While physically we are more close to some people and we keep distance from other people. But in the mind there is no difference. And then we bring this meditation to a conclusion, and also the session from today. And we dedicate all by discussing, by meditating, all that positive energy. We dedicate it to the happiness and the well-being of all sentient beings, especially those of this world that are going through a very difficult time. Thank you very much for being here. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the methods of developing bodhicitta, how we can really develop the heart that is reaching out to each and every sentient being. And we have now a very good foundation of self-compassion and of equanimity. And so on the basis of that, we can open up in a healthy and safe manner. So have a very good night, or a good day, or good afternoon, wherever you are. And I hope to see you tomorrow for the last day of the course, and then there is an extra day for the sponsors, I think it's called. But we will finish the course, and then for the last day we do something extra. All right, good night.